suicide. And I think the main thing is I've had strong leanbacks around me my whole life that kept me from driving myself to that point.
Sure.
And my sister is a huge rock for me as well. She pretty much kept me to where it was like, she was that one person in my head that I was like, I couldn't do that to her. I couldn't leave her without me.
Hello, everyone. Sergeant Snell here. Most of you already know me. For those of you who don't, this is a really strange way to meet, but nice to meet you nonetheless. So the purpose of this video today is not necessarily to solve the Air Force suicide epidemic in one fell swoop, although that would be awesome. The purpose of this video is to maximize the voices of some of the folks we have who are currently struggling so that we can more accurately brainstorm solutions on how to help. As difficult as it may be to hear and confront some of the things in this video, take my word for it, it's far easier to have these conversations than it is to say goodbye to a friend or a loved one for good. As far as what qualifies me to make this video, absolutely nothing, except for about 10 years ago, I had a couple of suicide attempts. Spoiler alert, I survived them. And for many years, I considered myself a subject matter expert in the suicide scene until last year, my friend Mike took his own life. And it made me realize that while I knew a lot about my own experience, I know a lot about my own experience and not about others. So it made me start to become interested in talking to other folks who might not be right up on the brink of that I'm going to take my life right now type deal, but folks who may have experienced it or may struggle with depression, hopelessness, and loss on a daily basis. So the purpose of this video is to reach out, hear their stories, showcase them, to make others aware that they're not alone or necessarily unique in their struggles. And then finally, to normalize this conversation, because I truly believe that as long as we allow the stigma to remain high, we can't be surprised that the suicide rates are high as well. So I hope you all enjoy this video. I'll be back at the end to recap what we learned.
So when I was at DLI, I actually lost 2 stripes. Drinking and driving underage altogether in the bucket. And was having a rough go of it at that point. Had a friend pass away in a car accident during the same time frame and just started falling apart as an airman and a person. Couldn't really sleep a lot, couldn't get to school, work, whatever you'd call it at that time. Couldn't get on time anywhere. I'd forget things, like my brain was just falling to pieces, almost like Kerplunk being finished when all the balls dropped, like losing my mind. And my MTL was just savage, straight savage. Told me that he was going to get me out of the Air Force, told me that I was more worthless an airman than he thought I was. Tried to volunteer through him, and he was like, yeah, you're pretty much just a joke to the Air Force. Like, I don't want you volunteering under me. You'd be a disgrace to the Air Force, you're a disgrace to the uniform, stuff like that. And I thought I didn't have anyone to go to, and ended up, my flight chief, about a week later, PT stopped me. He's like, you're not a bad person. You're not some horrible human being. Like, you just made a mistake. You're not a bad airman either. Like, I see that you bust your butt, and I see that you're trying. And kind of just humbled me a little bit to see that while my direct leadership was just crapping on me and dropping everything on my head, my flight chief was watching and like standing at a distance but keeping an eye on me.
Right.
And he ended up telling me later on, like, hey, if you ever need to talk, you can come to my office, like, uniforms off, we're normal humans, like, we can just talk to each other. And so seeing that I had that kind of support in the system, whereas the system was trying to rip me apart on the other side, it was really nice.
Yeah.
So.
Being on the ops floor, working those 12-hour mids, and yeah, like, it was just, it's a horrible time in life. It has an effect on you.
Yeah.
And you're alone with your thoughts, especially like a lot of the time. And when your thoughts aren't good, that just kind of spirals downward. So on the ops floor, I would see supervisors or other people on the crew, or even there was one mock who would I would be having my worst day, and somehow she knew to just like smile at me and greet me.
Sure.
And that's like super basic, but it when people would acknowledge my existence and show that kindness and make me feel like I belonged, like that is the maybe not the only thing that would cause me to hold on, but it definitely helped
That's
immensely. So.
gargantuan.
At least for me, like everyone's experiences are going to be different. I don't think that suicide is like a one size fits all issue. But what I've noticed a lot is if you feel ostracism, if that's the word, if you feel ostracized.
Ostrich-like feelings.
Yes, indeed. If you feel ostracized, or you feel left out, or you feel like people are judging you, or feel like people are gossiping about you, or kind of keeping their distance, it's heartbreaking and it hurts.
Right.
The loneliness is compounded, and it's just like, well, what am I here for? I mean,
Sure.
And I guess just people being people and always trying to pick at a scab someone else. Like you always like to try and make yourself feel a little better by seeing someone else's problem, I guess, and digging at their problem.
Sure.
Sometimes, like, I know a lot of times people think they're joking or playing around, and they'll try and throw shade, as the new phrase is nowadays, or
Yeah,
like
keep up.
pick on
Should be
tear
good with it.
people. I know we have some older people in the
Sure.
unit that might not
We do.
understand.
Well, I'll just put the Urban Dictionary on the bottom of the.
Cut that part out, by the way.
Yeah, well, all young and sprightly.
But it's just like, you know, I've seen a lot of stuff in the office now about like bullying being a thing, and like I'm just laughing because I'm like, we were trying to stop that back when I was in high school, like 7 years ago, and
Right.
now it's still a thing in
Right.
actual businesses. It honestly just blows my mind that people
Sure.
are grown ups and still want to just treat people like crap to get their own gains out of it mentally. And I think it's a movie quote:
Love it.
"Be kind to each other,
Sure.
always. If you're good to everyone else, it's going to have a good outcome. If you're a negative person, of course it's going to have a negative outcome. But just always being kind to everyone, trying to take care of each other, you're going to at least enforce that type of mindset, and it's going to help them strengthen themselves from not making the wrong decision later down the road."
like, I think that people feel like they have to go above and beyond, or take all of these steps to mitigate someone hurting themselves. But it's really just like keeping eyes on everyone and making sure there isn't a person that falls through the cracks. You don't have to like sit down and have a 2-hour discussion with somebody, with every single one of the airmen every single day or whatever, but just, you know, making sure that people are being kept afloat and people aren't being forgotten about, because there are those quiet people, or there are those people who don't want to be seen and don't want the spotlight on them. But I mean, you can't just like let them just like fade into the background.
All right, first and foremost, I'd like to thank Senior Airman Tanner Ree and Staff Sergeant Marie Bailey for having the courage to step forward and have this conversation today. It was an absolute blast talking with them. We had to leave a lot of footage on the cutting room floor, believe it or not. But to recap, the major things that jumped out at me is A, having a family support structure is extremely important. So keep an eye on the people around you who may not have that, because it's one less safety net in the event that their life starts to go to shambles. Secondarily, we have Jenga. I think is a great analogy, just because you never know what support pieces are being taken away in the in the background, in the periphery, from somebody's stability. And so be mindful of that, and don't always be so quick to add more on top of their struggle. Reach in and intervene and add some more support structures if you can. On the support topic, as we all know, frontline supervisors bear a large brunt of the identification and intervention piece when it comes to suicide. However, sometimes those deeply hard buried emotions can be easier to access from people with a little bit more rank, a first shirt, a flight chief, a mock in this case. Somebody reaching in and just doing something kind can sometimes mean the world to somebody going through a rough time. Next, listening can be just as important as saving. So we all got a hero complex, and we all want to kick the door down at the last moment and save somebody. However, the millions of steps that lead up to that are also intervention points. So taking your time to take a deep breath, set your tasker aside, and just sit down and have a conversation like this and let people open up and express their feelings is extremely important. And lastly, we have the facts that, even though jokes are a blast, you really got to know who you're talking to. Make sure that you're not making a joke. Err on the side of caution. Make sure you're not, busting somebody's chops, because you just never know what somebody might be going through. This entire project was a blast. I'm sorry I can't be there to watch it with you guys, but this is the type of conversation about suicide that I want to have. I don't want it to build up and be talking to somebody on their, maybe one of their last days on Earth. I would much rather sit in a room, share our experiences, and empathize and support each other, because it was absolutely fun. There was zero energy drain there. I had a blast doing it, and really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch it, and I hope the rest of your day is amazing.